What's up, guys? Welcome back to Daniel with Daniel. This week, we are going to be learning about Perek Zion, a very important Perek. I would personally say I think it's the most important Perek, and many more people, more scholarly than I would agree, would say that as well. That structurally, at least, that this Perek is the most important Perek of the Sefer. Mainly because it is the glue that holds together both parts of the Sefer. If you guys remember, it was a while ago, so you might not. Well, this is when we actually were able to have class in person. We spoke about how the book of Daniel is really split up into two very different parts. You have the first part, which is Perek Aleph through Zion, which is about different stories and different dreams of people who are not Daniel. And it's written in Aramaic, and it's very different from the second part of the Sefer, which is Perek Zion through Yud Bet, which is a first-hand account, pretty much from Daniel himself, about his own visions and dreams. And Perek Zion is the glue that holds that together. It takes elements from either part, and it sort of is a merger between the two parts and really glues the whole thing together. So structurally, this is the most important Perek of the Sefer. The content is important as well. All content in the Torah and in Tanakh is extremely important. There's nothing in the Torah that's not important. However, this information that we see in this Perek is actually information that we've seen before. We already know this. We saw it in a different way, but we already know it. Daniel already knows it. So it's not anything really new. It matters. There's a reason why it says it again, and there's a reason why Daniel had to see it himself and not just to interpret from someone else. But at the end of the day, us as people learning the Sefer, we've already seen this before, so it's not a huge shocker. We know exactly what's going to happen. Because if you guys remember, I actually asked you guys to text me about this, but none of you did. Whatever, no big deal. I'm not upset at all. Whatever. In Perek Bet, Daniel interpreted a dream of King Nebuchadnezzar. And what was that dream? That dream was about a statue. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream about a statue with a gold head, a silver torso, bronze thighs, and iron legs. And then, remember, that statue was destroyed by a huge, big rock. So, what did that dream mean? Right here. The head represented the Babylonian Empire, the chest and the arms represented the Persian Empire, the thighs represented the Greece Empire, the Empire of Greece, and the legs represented the Roman Empire. And the big rock that destroyed all of it represented God, wiping out those kingdoms from the earth and ultimately giving back to the Jewish people. So that's pretty much what we see in this coming Perek. It's a little different. The dream is a little different, but it represents the same thing ultimately. And it's a little more intense than King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. But ultimately, it's very similar content. So content-wise, I don't know if I would say that this is the most important Perek of the Sefer, but structure-wise, it definitely is. And we're going to go into that, and I'm going to explain it better and more in depth. But let's start off with just talking about the dreams. Let's talk about what the dream that Daniel had was and what each animal represents. And yeah, let's go over that. Remember, we went back in time. Perek Vav, we got to 539 BCE when Persia came and took over the Babylonian Empire. Now we backtrack to 556 BCE, which is the first year of the reign of Belshazzar. And that's fine. Remember, we spoke about how the Bible is not a history book. It's not here to teach us history. It's here to teach us far more important things than just history. So it doesn't matter that it jumps around. It's going to jump around a lot more in the coming prakim. It's going to get a lot more confusing, and that's fine. So Daniel has a dream. 4 animals emerge from the ocean, one by one. The first is a lion with the wings of an eagle. the wings are then plucked out, and it was taken from the earth. It stood on its feet like a man, and it says in the pasuk, the heart of a mortal was given to it. So Rashi says that the lion represents the Babylonian Empire, just like the head of gold in the statue from Nebuchadnezzar's dream. It represents the Babylonian Empire, and the wings getting plucked off represent its downfall, the downfall of the Babylonian Empire, which at this point now in time, 556 BCE, is a couple of decades into the future. It's also interesting, this same lion is actually mentioned in Yirmiyahu. It's two different psukim spread apart, where it talks about a lion, and then it talks about the same lion again that had that soared like an eagle. But it's interesting. I just think it's an interesting little tidbit, not really so important to the class right now, but the lion is mentioned in Yirmiyahu, Perek Dalid, Pasuk Zayin, so chapter 4, Pasuk 7. And here, this lion in Sefer Daniel is mentioned in Perek Zayin, Pasuk Dalid, chapter 7, Pasuk 4. I just thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, that's the first animal done. Next, a bear. A bear, an animal resembling a bear, stood on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And so did they say to it, get up and eat much meat. Here he is right here. These are the 3 ribs in his mouth. So Rashi has a few things to say about this bear. First, he says that this bear represents Persia. The Persian people who will reign after Babylon, they eat and drink like bears, and it also says that they are enwrapped in flesh like a bear. Honestly, I don't know what that means. Maybe they wore a lot of animal skins, the Persians, the ancient Persians, I have no idea, but that's what Rashi says. What does it mean, and it stood to one side? Rashi says that that means it indicates that the kingdom of Babylon will fall to Persia and the Medians, and under Persia's rule, under the control of Cyrus, Darius of Mede will take over for a year and hold the place for a year, hold the kingdom for a year until Cyrus finishes his campaign. We talked about that last week. So Rashi says that the fact that the bear stood to one side indicates just that. And the 3 ribs represents the 3 kings of Persia that will rule. King Cyrus, who is the first ruler of this current Persian Empire. He'll be back soon in our Sefer. Achashverosh, we all know who Achashverosh is. And lastly, another Darius. So according to history, this guy might be the only Darius, because remember, history isn't really sure if Darius of Mede really exists, but this Darius definitely existed. So it's Darius or Darius II. It's unclear. And that Darius is presumed to be the son of Achashverosh and Esther. So he's Jewish, which is cool. And he was the one that let the Jews go back to Judea and rebuild the temple. So that's what the 3 ribs represent, those 3 kings. Next, in Pasuk Vav, we see a leopard that had 4 wings of a bird on its back, and it had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. What does the leopard represent? Rashi says the leopard represents the Macedonian Empire, the Greek Empire. Why is it at 4 heads and 4 wings? That is because, if anyone knows anything about ancient Greek history, Alexander the Great, one of the greatest war generals of all time, conquered all of the known world, like everything, and which was a feat that pretty much no one had ever done before. To the capability and that Alexander the Great did it, he did it well, pretty much. He did it well, and no one else had done it like he did. Sorry about that. I got a little distracted. My phone was buzzing. Someone was trying to call me. Sorry about that. I'm back. What was I saying? Alexander the Great, he was the greatest war general of all time. That's all you really need to know. But he died very shortly after his conquest, and his kingdom was split up into 4 parts. These 4 parts, these 4 heads, these 4 wings represent those 4 parts. And specifically, this leopard also represents the kingdom of Antiochus, who we all know was a bad guy. He wasn't a great guy. He was really bad to the Jews. And the spots on the leopard represented his spotted and varied policies that he had about the Jewish people. And then lastly, the fourth beast was awesome and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth, ate, crushed, and trampled the rest with his feet, and was different than the others and had 10 horns. That is this guy right over here. So Rashi says that this last beast represents the Roman Empire, which as an empire was probably the greatest in history at that point, better than the Greek Empire was before it. And the 10 teeth that the 10 horns, represented 10 kings that came before Vespasian, who was the one that destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. All right, so now we see, the lion is just like the gold head, the bear is just like the silver torso, the leopard is just like the bronze thighs, and the crazy dragon thing is just like the iron legs. So, like I said, content-wise, it's stuff that we already know. It's stuff that Daniel already knows. Although Daniel was very shaken up by it. It does say in the last pasuk that he was very frightened by it, but he couldn't really do anything about it, so he kept it to himself. And then the pasuk before that, the perek ends off with Daniel watching as God takes a seat in the throne of heaven. He sits in judgment in the midst of the heavenly court. Then he puts this fourth beast to death. A human-like being approaches God in the clouds of heaven and is given everlasting kingship. That everlasting kingship is Mashiach and Am Yisrael, which is equivalent to that rock that destroyed the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And that's that. Like I said, content-wise, it's all stuff that we know already. So what is it about the structure specifically that makes it important? Like I said, it's the glue that holds together the entire Sefer. But beyond that, it sets also a very strong precedence for what's to come. Daniel is having these intense visions that he's not so comfortable having, like they make him feel scared, and that sets the precedent for the rest of the Sefer. We're going to see and learn about a lot of confusing things, a lot of intense things, and it just shows the character of Daniel, that this is a person that God entrusted with this knowledge and the ability to read these dreams and read these visions, and it's very important precedent that this perek sets. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Another thing I wanted to go over is just the interesting structure that this Sefer has, the first part of the Sefer. I mentioned that the first part of the Sefer is a collection of stories and other visions, but it's not random. It's very well thought out and put into something called a chiastic structure, which is something that the Bible uses all the time. A chiastic structure is basically it's a literary technique that frames an idea or an event within a pattern of other events. Meaning, here, 1 second, let me just pull this up. All right. Meaning you have a statement. Statement A, ask what you can do for your country. A. Statement B, 1 second. Sorry about that, just confused myself for a second. So you have statement A, it says ask, you can't really read it fully, but it says ask what you can do for your country. Ask not what your country can do for you. So statement A is about you. Statement is about your country. Statement B is about you. And then it goes on to say, ask what you, so it's bringing back B, can do for your country. A, B, B, A. It's framing the idea. So it's framing the idea with this structure where it starts off saying something, it moves on to another topic, and then it finishes the statement by continuing with that middle topic and then finishing off with the first topic again. By the way, you can't see the quote on this because it's a little cut off, but it's a quote by John F. Kennedy. I believe it's from his inaugural speech. Just think it's important to quote people where it's due. Anyways, here's another more basic example where you have A, B, C, D, D, C, B, A. So Sefer Daniel, we start off with Perek Bet, all right? We have Perek Bet for A1, where it's a dream of 4 kingdoms replaced by a 5th. That's King Nebuchadnezzar's dream about the statue. Then B is the story of Daniel's friends when they got thrown into the furnace, a story about ultimate faith in God that saves people. Then you have C, Perek Dalet. Daniel interprets the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar, the dream where he kind of goes crazy and becomes an animal for like 7 years. You guys remember that? That's that. And then there's no D in Sefer Daniel right now, so just move over. C again, we have then Daniel interpreting the writing on the wall of Belshazzar. And then we have B, the story of Daniel being thrown into the lion's pit, which is just like the first B, which is Daniel's friends being thrown into a furnace. Both of those people were saved because of their faith in God. All of those people were saved because of their faith in God. So it's kind of like the same topic. So it's B and B. And then we're moving back to our final A, which is now Perek Zayin, a vision of 4 world kingdoms replaced by a 5th. Once again, just like this dream of the statue, it's a dream of all these different animals and how it represents the future and the changing of kingships and kingdoms. So yeah, chiastic structures are just very important in my opinion. A lot of important points of the Torah are framed like this. It's a little hard to explain over a video class, so I hope it wasn't too confusing. Next week, we're going to continue with Perek Chet, so that's Perek Zayin. We're now moving in, like I said, to the second part of Sefer Daniel, to the part where it's just Daniel's dreams and his visions, and it's going to be awesome. Yeah, guys, bye. Hope you guys have a great week.